Boys, let's talk about Warner Brothers. There are a lot of things going on. Artist enemy number one is what I wrote them down as. Closing down studios, writing off various movies for tax reasons, increasingly butchering their video game output for increased monetization. I wanted to shout out the fact that Mortal Kombat 1, we hardly knew ye. It got off the ground and now it's been lambasted for overcharging for skins and monetization. And now we have a new report over on Variety.com talking to various high-level Warner Brothers executives about WTF they're doing going forward. There's various talking points from this, notes thankfully written up by Mr. Josh Brown himself. And we'll dissect some stuff. So one thing here is the idea of them pinpointing their $1 billion gaming properties, to which they say that's DC, Game of Thrones, Mortal Kombat, and Harry Potter. There's a quote in here that kind of reiterates David Zaslav's general approach, Zaslav being Warner Brothers CEO. He said last year that they have this whole push into live services. Why can't everything be a live service? Why can't we monetize everything? And there's a follow-up quote in this report from CFO Gunnar Wiedefels? I did look up his name to pronounce it properly, and then I messed it up. But it's Gunnar Wiedefels, saying in regards to profits in the gaming space, I've double and triple checked some of the metrics here because it's such a great investment opportunity. And he's stunned that we haven't been investing more into this opportunity. We're going to start tackling that. It's worth throwing in that Shadow of War died because of this general approach. And same with Mortal Kombat 11 getting paid fatalities and the state of Mortal Kombat.
What if we just did it again?
What if we just kept doing it?
What if we just kept doing it? The numbers on the sheet, Scott. The numbers on the sheet. They don't lie.
It spiked before it went down. If we can just spike it over and over again. But we'll keep going. There's obviously a lot more to this. But I guess general thoughts, Josh.
Well, I'm not a huge businessman, right? Surprise, perhaps, who knows? But sometimes you don't want to be seen by people who are higher than you. And if I was in any of the WB studios working on games right now and I saw that quote about an executive looking at the numbers and saying, we can't believe we haven't invested more on this, this is our next cash cow, I'd be thinking, oh no, they are going to start meddling in what we do. And by the sounds of it, that's absolutely going ahead. I mean, there's so much to pick apart from already what you've just said and the entire Variety report in general. It's definitely great. I would go recommend reading it. But straight away, when they're talking about those $4 billion IPs, I understand them all. But Game of Thrones was really surprising. I didn't even know they had a Game of Thrones game out, and they refer to a mobile title that apparently rakes in money. But I thought, really? Like, out of all of the IP that WB owns, Game of Thrones in the gaming sphere is already a billion-dollar entity.
I didn't know about Game of Thrones Conquest. I'll throw in part of the Variety report itself says with the focus shifting from console and PC-based games to 3 to 4 year release schedules, a good example of what to expect going forward is mobile games like Game of Thrones Conquest, which ticks the always-on box. And I can throw in as well, as an AEW fan over on the wrestling side, they have 2 mobile apps. And they have the AEW Fight Forever game. It's horrific. But there are 2 mobile apps as well. So it feels like that idea of just get the casuals, get the mobile apps going, tick that stuff over.
The live service thing is the most frustrating. You know, we're seeing already games that have been sort of diluted from this edict, I want to call it. You know, Gotham Knights of the Year obviously was not a live service game, but there were the warts of those trends in that game in terms of its loot system. And then also, with Suicide Squad right now, as much as it's not being referred to as a live service game by Rocksteady, but instead a dynamic multiplayer experience, whatever you want to call it, the warts of that are there as well. So, yeah, no, I just find this all very frustrating because the conversations and the trajectories of the gaming industry have gone in the complete opposite direction. You've gone on at length, Scott, about Jim Ryan's tenure, the head of PlayStation, him stepping away, kind of axing a bunch of live service projects when we had loads in The Last of Us live service game kind of canned as well. So it just feels like Warner Brothers yet again are doing that thing they do where they're about 5 years late to the party and are pressing aggressively ahead with stuff, ignoring all the warning signs. It comes to me that this sounds like people who do not understand games. And there's a quote about James Gunn later in this, which kind of really reinforces that to me.
No, I think that's a great point, man. Like, I think you're absolutely spot on. Like, every move they're making now stinks of executives who are just figuring out what games are. And they are, like you were saying, making the mistakes of, in my opinion, not just 5 years ago, but 10 years ago. Yeah. You look at them pinpointing, was it Game of Thrones Conquest, the mobile title that is apparently raking in money? And they're saying, why don't we get into mobile? Not realizing mobile was oversaturated 10 years ago, and it's quite difficult to break into that mold. And a bunch of the big publishers in the gaming space have tried, and some have succeeded, but it's not as easy as looking at the numbers on a graph and going, well, why don't we have 10 of them? Yeah. Same with live services, live services can make billions of dollars. They can make, the ceiling for revenue is way higher than a box single-player game. But how many of those die? Yeah. WB clearly doesn't have that experience right now to kind of understand that, I don't think. I'm not saying in the gaming division, I'm talking about from the higher up CEO, CFO positions who are overseeing movies, TV shows, as well as games. Like, I don't trust that they've seen the mistakes that have been made on the ground in the gaming industry over the past 10 years and will now be destined to just repeat them. And I imagine there are a bunch of veteran gaming executives within those divisions, within, your NetherRealms and your Rocksteadies and whatnot, going, but this is demonstrably not the way to go. It's been proven over the past decade this is not the way to go. This could be the best idea in the world, right? In theory, merging all of these different aspects of the business together. But as soon as they open their mouths and start talking about buzzwords and retention and churn rate and all of those, that corpus
content.
Essentially content, yeah, you just lose faith in it, or at least I do. When they're talking about, you mentioned there, it's not going to make for a quality product. It's not going to make for something that's essential. I don't even think that's what they're after. Like, when you look at the quotes from these analysts who are working with these big studios, it's not about making good stuff. It's not about quality. It's about retention. It's about engagement. As long as you're there on their streaming service and you're engaging with something for a long time, to them, that's a win. And it's hilarious that they've pinpointed games as a medium that's inherently longer in many ways than movies or TV shows that in their current form require more engagement and you returning to them over and over again. That's their solution. It's not to make higher quality things that people are happy to pay for and check out. It's how do we essentially turn this streaming service into a video game grind? How do we get people back and not canceling their subscriptions? Their answer is 100-hour games.
But also, from the ground up, the whole idea, the whole thing when this first came out, I think it was James Gunn that talked about it initially, the idea that going forward in the new shared universe, they would have characters that would go between TV, movies, and games. And they would try and share voice actors and things like that. There was obviously a backlash to that, being like, there's no way that's going to work, in regards to the reality of putting those projects together. But like I said, that side of it is the thing that I'm, as concerned about as anything else. The idea of trying to create something that the movie goes on the streaming service, the TV show's there, and then you can play the game and it's right alongside. You can see why a corporate mentality would say, well, that makes perfect sense, and we can monetize the game.
But James Gunn's a gamer, mate. It says so in the article.
There is a little quote. I wanted to throw in the thing about churn rates, because they talk about churn rates. Churn rates is just their term for the percentage, the likelihood of someone giving up on a given service. Just referring to them in that way, though, of churning through your customer base. So we have a few things about churn rates. Analyst Kevin Westcott says if you look at the companies that have large streaming platforms, they're dealing with 3+% per month churn on their subscribers. Westcott also says live games, the ones that the gaming industry is now talking about, have a very, very small churn rate as compared to streaming. So you're seeing more and more of the streaming players saying, why don't we add games as part of my entertainment offering? No one's asking that. No one's ever said that. Can I just get a game on my net? No one wanted that. No one plays Netflix games. No, they don't do it. Why don't they add games as part of my entertainment offering? Games have a lower churn rate. Music has a lower churn rate. And I've been recommending to our clients that they should think about offering a whole slew of other types of digital entertainment. And also, I guess it's in regards to the whole thing, you've got JB Perrette, who's the CEO of streaming and gaming, saying, frankly, there hasn't been as close a relationship between the studio and the games business as there should have been. And James Gunn is actually a gamer. So having someone who's passionate about it is super helpful. You know what would be better? If they were all gamers. Not what the hell it was. Instead of just one guy. Adding that Warner Brothers games, they say, or she says, that they're actively working with Gunn and Peter Safran on the core franchises within the DC universe. How on earth around that? As much as they want to do this unified front thing, they say that while they might be working on a Superman title right now, they're not necessarily going to launch a Superman game just because they feel obligated. To me, though, that's the mistake. Yeah, because if you're gonna do the unified front thing, there's something to capitalize on in regards to the way that franchise games used to come out. Like, we grew up with them. A lot of them were bad, but some of them were great. Toy Story 2 effing rules. Toy Story 3 is pretty good too. There's a way to do that with a reduced budget and get those things out there. You're either going to commit to this unified thing and create stuff that works across multiple mediums, or you don't know what you're doing with this.
I was going to quickly, there's a big chunky part of the write-up this, but I joked to you guys yesterday when I first read it that, I'm not as smart as James Gunn. I don't have as good hair as James Gunn. I didn't write Scooby-Doo. I certainly didn't write Dawn of the Dead. I wish I bloody didn't.
Lollipop Chainsaw either.
I didn't write Lollipop Chainsaw. But, when it comes to his position as overseeing everything DC related, not just movies, not just games, not just TV shows, but this entire multimedia universe, I don't know how that's possible. I can't do more than one podcast in a day without forgetting where I am, you know? If I was juggling all those properties, even if he's not hands-on with everything, even if he's not, like, obviously not directing everything, he's signing off on all that stuff, he's having the final say. I don't know why they're putting him in that position, because they're putting him in there to fail. You look at the MCU and what's happening with Kevin Feige right now, reportedly being stretched too thin across all of the content that they're pushing out. 4 movies a year.
Like butter over too much bread.
Yeah, butter over too much bread. And we've seen firsthand, even though they've still produced some good things, the quality kind of drop across the board because one person or even 2 people, like, it can't be in charge of that much stuff. On a human level, no doubt it'll burn them out eventually. It'll get sick and resentful of the entire thing. If I was doing that, I certainly would.
I think he would, because the amount of times he's like replying to people on Twitter with just random, just nonsense. Like, James, just go make your movies. Like, you don't need to be replying to like DC fan 258 on Twitter being like, actually no, the spot isn't going to be. Like, it's just that level of granularity is bizarre to me. The thing that frustrates me the most about Gunn getting involved in the video game side of things is that that's so creatively obliterating. If you have to be beholden to his vision of DC, that to me just reinforces how no one has a clue why DC was special for so long. It's the myriad different interpretations that you have going on with those projects. If this edict was down when, say, like when Christopher Nolan was making the Batman movies, if this thing was the thing that Rocksteady had to be beholden to, we wouldn't have gotten the Arkham series. We wouldn't have had that creatively unique, betas adjacent kind of video game series. It would have been, well, now you're going to have to just be beholden to the aesthetics of Nolan's world, which is so stifling. And I find it truly bizarre that they're doing this here. With the reason that it frustrates me is that I feel like they've looked across at Star Wars in particular, because not Marvel, because Marvel games have the foresight to not tether everything to the MCU. You can say Marvel's Avengers leaned into it slightly in terms of we're going to lean into those comparisons. We'll use the lineup of the 2012 movie, we'll ape some aesthetics or whatever, but it was still its own thing. With Star Wars, the reason why it works with having everything in that shared interconnected canon is because it has always been one man's vision. Yeah. It's always, as much as there have been different creatives involved, it all stems from George Lucas's mythos. There is a canon that contradicts itself or whatever, but if you want to live in Star Wars, at least you are living in Star Wars. With DC, you've had this thing that's been evolving for many, many years, and I think it's just it depresses me that the best they can offer for this new era of DC games is, well, we're just going to make it like the movies because we need to, we need to catch up with Marvel, we need to do this, and if we get this, we'll make it more. And I think it goes back to that point you were making about they don't care about making a product, they care about having your eyeballs in it. If we can make the video games as essential to your understanding of the on-screen universe, then that means more eyeballs on it. And it's the same reason why people, and again, there have been good Star Wars books, but it's the same reason why canon Star Wars books sell. It's because, we need to know more about this mythos that matters. I need to watch this TV show because I need to know what matters. I need to know what is impactful in this thing. And that is what is frustrating to me. I just see it so blazingly cynical approach to just, everyone's going to be so jazzed about James Gunn's new DC universe, so we're going to make the games part of it. It's going to be huge. Apart from it being practically impossible, on a just ethical and like creative level, it really, really upsets me.
I think there's I was going to say it super quickly. I think there's a really telling line at the very start of this article where they're talking about Game of Thrones Conquest, and they describe it not only as a moneymaker, but and I think this is a direct quote, a way to remind people of the TV show. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do, like with these direct tie-ins. It's not just about the game. It's not about making anything good. It's not even necessarily about shifting copies. It's about keeping your brain thinking about these franchises. So you buy the game, you go to the movies, you buy the merch, you watch the TV show, you're in that world. It's about retention. Video game development is already hard. I couldn't imagine having to deal with a movie studio and keeping on top of that stuff and being as reactive as you need to be. Movies are just about getting away with it, and even then, they're not really. And games are even harder to do.
The only reason why it works for Star Wars is because if you look at Jedi Fallen Order, it's set in and around the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, but you play a nobody. You play no average person on the street knows who Cal Kestis is. That is the reason why Star Wars games can work, is because you can play a person in that canon and do your own thing. if you are going to take the same approach with DC, and like you say, it's completely tethered to the film, so you can't necessarily say, oh, I'm going to play as Green Lantern in this game because it's like, oh, he's already in this TV show. Maybe you play as a different Green. I don't know. It does not make sense to me. Yeah. And the fact that they are this far aligned in this train of thought to publicly announce it and actually maybe move forward with it, that is a huge alarm bell, because it reiterates that they don't know what they're doing. And also, Warner Bros. Montreal have a DC game in development. They've had another DC game in development for the past 5 years now. What the hell happens to that if we're going with this new canon edict? Like, well, that's ridiculous.
That's something I haven't thought about. I was just talking about. Wow, I'm getting very angry. Very shouty on this podcast so far. Didn't expect to be so incensed, but we were just talking there about like the movies and how they were kind of dumped out and kind of tried to be salvaged, but not really. Yeah, what does that even mean for a Suicide Squad? Say that game is great. Is that like an Elseworlds title going forward? Will they be able to keep that franchise alive, or would they put Rocksteady on something that is more directly related to James Gunn's canon? Like, how will that work? Are they even pushing this as something that is going to be long-term, or is it just similar to The Flash, get this out the door until we can start our own new thing?
Well, their message, that's the thing. That's what I'm the most concerned about, is ultimately what we get to interact with when it finally releases. Because like their messaging around like the end of the DC EU, and then now we're doing the DCU or the Gunverse or whatever the hell it is, and all that stuff with Aquaman 2 or whatever. The
Lost Kingdom, yeah.
Lost Kingdom, and the final scene of that just felt like they just gave up. He just did like a weird Iron Man reference and it just ends and everything else. Like, the messaging around that was so lackluster. There's a potential, like, you're trying to give them the benefit of the doubt, which, like I said, I think it's inhuman to give one person that much control. There's only so many emails you can respond to, so many set visits you can do, so many scripts you can write, so many things you can check over. It is impossible. There's no way that James Gunn can pull all this stuff together. Best case scenario is that somehow he has some sort of, they would call it a brand Bible for each individual character, each individual franchise, and you lay all of that out. Everyone has a shared Google Doc, and they check in on it, and everything is right there, and you can only do so many plot points because they're signed off, and you somehow unify the production schedules of movies and video games, at least in regards to the widest strokes of what those visions are going to be. And I imagine, again, that's a pretty corporate way of thinking about it, because they can say that in a boardroom meeting, and everyone goes, well, that makes total sense, that'll be completely fine. And then, like you said, the reality of video game development, if someone gets recast or for whatever reason, or some part of the movie thing falls apart, it takes months to sort that stuff on the gaming side, if not years, depending on how integral they were to a certain scene or gameplay mechanic or whatever it is. And that's where the impossibility stuff comes in. Before you even get to the idea of how creatively stifling it is to not be able to do different games, because everything has to talk to everything else. Everything has to be consistent in regards to the characters and everything else. You need a unified front on the writing side, which no writer wants to, like, put up with someone that you're in a different country or a different state or whatever it is, and make sure you're writing towards the same goal. That's not why people get into.
It's not going to be. You can't secure those actors down either, because if you're tethering it to the movie, it's going to aim for the same aesthetic, which I'm imagining is going to be like movie realistic mocap. You need actors in studios with balls on their face the entire time. They're not going to be down for that. No. And then they're not going to be able to like record stuff for ages either. So yeah, no, it's just it. I can't believe that we're actually talking about this. Like, how is this not like just gone, it's a silly thought, actually. Let's just let them continue to do their own thing.
Well, it's because that, like I said, I feel like it's been so brazenly, nakedly honest, these attempts at monetizing various fandoms and trying to do the top-down approach, the boardroom approach. And we've seen the bodies that come from it, the likes of the Shadow of War, the Mortal Kombat's reputation over time, and the amount of layoffs that happen when these deals don't pan out. I did want to throw in, obviously, part of the report is talking about that idea of mining video games overall as one part of this, as something to adapt and dive into the video game IP as the next medium to mine in general. And Variety's report says, in WB's 2024 predictions, in the 2024 predictions report from analyst company Deloitte?
Yeah, Deloitte.
Yeah.
Drew a strong correlation between the success of films and TV shows and the offerings of video games based on the same IP, noting that several of the top 50 grossing films for 2023 have corresponding hit games. The analysts estimate that the share of theatrical box office revenues from video game IP will double by 2025, and that most of the top streamers will be home to shows based on games at that point, following the massive success of HBO's The Last of Us. Which is the thing that I mentioned before. Like, I feel like your PlayStation are leading with that double-pronged approach at the minute.
So was that games, movies that have games are more successful, or was it games that have been movies were more successful?
Yeah. their takeaway is like a lot of the movies that ended up in the box office for 2023 had corresponding hit games, but that's what I said.
Okay.
Quality coming first. Like you can't lead with this whole thing with nothing to actually base it on.
I can at least see where they're coming from with this. I can imagine again, I still like superhero movies. I still like things that are popular right now. But I imagine Suits in a boardroom looking at the decline of the box office revenue for not only their studio's biggest hitters, but their competitors as well. And they're looking at the likes of the Mario movie making $1 billion, the Sonic movies doing pretty good business, and then looking at TV like The Last of Us getting mad viewership and a bunch of Emmy Awards, and pivoting to games as the next big source of revenue for adaptation. I can see why they would be going down that route, and I do think it makes sense. But is it for the right reasons? Like, what are they trying to get out of this? Is it just, again, a way to mine IP? And I think it's really fascinating because when they referred to their $1 billion gaming IPs that they currently have, only one of those is actually an original from the gaming world, Mortal Kombat. Everything else originated from something else. It's already an adaptation. So if you're going all in on, adapting your biggest movie and TV franchises into games, how can you then look towards movies and say, oh, but the future of movies is to adapt the video games we own, because you are moving away from those things.
Like licensing deals to add after the video games, then keep that. I mean, the whole canon conversation is obviously way more of a DC, EU, Gunverse thing. But their overall business mandate seems to be unifying mediums under one creative vision or whatever it is. But it's just a part of this. Yeah, part of this report is that idea of what can we mine from the gaming space, which is a wider conversation, like I said before, on what do various Hollywood studios look to now that the comic book medium has been drained. Like, we need to rest that for a bit. We can start mining video games.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still just baffling in this headspace of like, I'm just remembering that Warner Bros. Have gone all in with James Gunn's DC mythos, right? It's pretty much every superhero movie the last 2 years has become like a partial box office disappointment.
The modern world, they're done.
Yeah, it's just, I find this all baffling. And Warner Brothers themselves, they don't have any video game IP to adapt. So it's like you're going to be licensing other stuff from other people, then feeding into... This is all just really stupid. Business is stupid, and I hate that we're at this point now where this is just... Oh man, no, it's disgusting. It's just really upsetting. Like, I feel like it's mad that we're in 2024 right now. We're talking about like something that had so much premise and potential, and we're reducing it to just eyeball time, viewer attention time. That's not to say that business decisions were never an impact before, because they always have been. And stuff that is good can come from nakedly business-focused approaches. That's why Joel Silver, all his movies kind of went so hard. Like, even though they were nakedly about, we're going to appeal to demographics and whatever. Like Jerry Bruckheimer as well. I'm here for a good Jerry Bruckheimer time. But all this, it's so algorithmically analytical and like... Obviously, the psychology's been behind it as well. It just feels like they're trying to get in my brain. They're trying to get in my brain and steer me into going 5 for Creature Commandos, please. Yes. I'll take the Creature Commandos spin-off game developed by Warner Bros. Montreal that used to be, I don't know, a Catwoman game. It's so bad.
All we want to do is get your skull, open it up, and turn down the lever on your churn rate percentage in that head of yours, and then stitch it back up and
just invent the box from Batman Forever. That is the only alternative. I want the box from Batman Forever now.